welcome everyone to episode 4 of the Second Look Sports Podcast. We look a little bit different today. That is, in fact, not Brandon Brown filling in. We have our producer, Sarah Maat, stepping in for Brandon. He's working very hard this evening, helping with SN Tonight and a couple other things with his internship. As always, we do have Justin Arenburg in the studio, and then as myself, host Alex Mandarino in the studio, in our separate little apartments, whatever works for everyone. But we're going to have some fun this week. We're going to go a little bit into some NFL topics. We're going to get sort of the first touch on PWHL. But before we get into anything, I think it's fair to suggest that, Sarah, we give you a bit of time to reintroduce yourself. I mean, I know you had a chance episode 1 to kind of get into a little bit of like who you follow and who you are, but you're on the mic today, which is pretty exciting. So Sarah, whatever you feel like getting into right now, we're going to give you a few minutes to just chat. So what do you got for us today?
Sounds good. It's great to be here. It's kind of weird because I usually like to spend my time behind a computer writing. That's the way I like to engage with sports, is writing about it, not really talking about it. So it's kind of pushing my comfort zone today, but I'm happy to be here. And I thought to let people get to know me better, I had to bring one thing, which was this basketball coffee mug, because basketball's my favorite sport, and I would be nothing without coffee. So, but yeah, I'm excited.
You're drinking coffee. You're drinking coffee right now?
Yes. Don't you want an exciting podcast?
I can't argue with that. I just, for the people listening, it's 6:30 p.m. like our time. So I'm normally like someone who drink. I stop around 4. I know that's even late, but like I'm not. Hey, listen, we'll have energy. So
how about just not doing it at all during the day? How about
that's ridiculous?
You know what? There's so many people that we like, because for those of you who may have tuned in for the first time, like we've all met through our post-grad program for sports journalism. A lot of the people in our program just don't drink coffee at all. Like I can think of
Justin is one of them.
That's crazy to me. I mean, respect, because like if I could never drink it, I'd be happy, because like it's somewhat of like an addiction. But I can't imagine a world without it.
Yeah, I mean,
listen, I can't imagine a world with it. Like when I drink coffee, I don't like, the only thing coffee that I like is ice cream coffee, like the flavor of coffee.
I'm glad you clarified that, because like that makes sense for a second. Dude, I get it though. I get that.
Coffee ice cream is underrated. Almost, it's one of the best. But that's why I'll leave it.
It's good. Sarah, we jumped right in. I jumped in on your coffee. Anything else for the people though? Because I didn't give you a lot of time to speak there.
Well, I feel like that's kind of about it. Okay. I'm excited to talk about the PWHL. That's probably one of my top sports along with WNBA. So the more women's sports we get into this podcast, the better. But I'm excited to be here.
No kidding. I couldn't agree more. Justin, we'll throw it over to you. You have something you want to share with the pod, but weekly, like anything exciting going on in the week before you jump in anything, or do you want to just hit us with your take here?
It's been a wild week. It's just been kind of crazy. We're training on a different side of sports right now with our internship. So kind of new stuff there, picking it up pretty good, I think. But other than that, like the week has kind of flown by, man. Like I can't believe it's already January 9th. Like it's crazy to think about how quick this week has gone. The new year's running off quickly. It's running off good. I can't wait to see where the new year takes everyone that is a part of Second Look Sports. That's including the Second Look Hockey Sports podcast that you guys should check out as well. But the one thing I need to get off my chest before we jump into this pod is I was right. I was completely right. I said I wouldn't be surprised, and I wasn't surprised. Canada blew it. You know what? For a second in the third period, I was like, when they put Gavin McKenna on the correct line and actually started using him properly, the most talented player on Team Canada, the only player on Team Canada, in my opinion, that could actually take a guy on one-on-one, whoever it was in the tournament, and actually beat him. They actually started using him and playing him. Dave Cameron, terrible job. Absolute terrible job. But I know the Second Looks Hockey podcast got into it, so I'm not going to go too in deep to it. But I just want to say I was right about Canada losing to Czechia in the quarterfinal, and I called it way back before Christmas.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that I think, like you said it, me and Brandon sort of were like, maybe more optimism for Canada, but you did sort of lean into the fact that like it's not that roster management wasn't right. And I think we talked about it last time on Second Look Hockey, but you're right. I mean, Yeah, we don't need to get too much into it, but we'll give it to you. You're going to get a lot of love this podcast because a lot of the things that we're talking about have to do with your teams. And I'm not actually, one of the things that I'm going to say is going to fuel the fire. And we'll get into that later. But other than that, excited to be back. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to even watch that Czechia-Canada quarterfinals. I was working Leafs Talk. I was working Leafs Talk that night. So the same night that I think they were playing the Islanders.
Yeah, I think they were playing the Islanders that night. Yeah.
Back to back. So I was watching, and that game wasn't that fun. The Leafs ended up winning, but regardless, it's the Isles, so they bore everybody to sleep. All that to say, you were right. Canada needs a change, and I'm sure we'll be talking about that in the.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You got it, buddy. It's not going to be coming around. I mean, a broken clock is right twice a day. You know what I mean? So like, here we are.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
No, but we'll change topics. We'll get into the NFL. It's going to be pretty NFL heavy today, other than sprinkling in obviously a couple other topics. But to kind of kick things off, Week 18 completed last Sunday, and I guess Saturday and a Thursday as well. So the NFL regular season has come to a close. I'm sure everyone's gearing up for Wild Card Weekend this upcoming January, I guess 10th and 11th. But until then, just to kind of recap real quickly, we'll get into maybe just our interesting storylines from Week 18. You have the Ravens clinching the AFC North win over Cleveland. The Broncos beat the Chiefs. They actually shut them out, knock out the Bengals and Dolphins. The Bucks clinch the NFC South with a win over the Saints, and then the Lions beating the Vikings to win the NFC North and the entire NFC. That was sort of the biggest storyline. I think the best way to go about it, Justin, we all know sort of what happened. What was your takeaway or a couple of interesting takeaways, if you have any, from Week 18?
Listen, I think Week 18 was honestly, it could have been great. It was set up to be good after the Bengals won on Saturday night, at least giving it Sunday a chance. And then I was expecting maybe the Kansas City Chiefs not to win the game, but I thought Carson Wentz, still with a decent team around him, would actually put up some points. Now, they got absolutely skunked against the Denver Broncos. That wasn't even close. It wasn't even a game. It wasn't even a competition. The NFL should I think that should have the NFL questioning Week 18, having them rest players just on the purpose of you want to have at least a competitive game for someone to get in, because I just felt like someone could literally just walk into the playoffs hand-free. Here you go. It's just like the Mets and Braves doubleheader that day. Who was going to play the second game in the doubleheader? They already won the playoff. So that's where I was at with that for Week 18. Other Week 18 matchups, honestly, they didn't really excite me. And the one that really didn't excite me was the Patriots beating the Bills. So that's where I'm at with Week 18.
Okay. No, it's funny. I feel like I have some similar notes, but the point that I just want to emphasize that you made about sort of looking into Week 18 and how the NFL makes adjustments to that, I would be curious if they do. I mean, it's been this way for a long time. They just introduced the Week 18 a couple of years ago. There used to only be the 16 rather than the 17 game slate, but it's interesting because with the NFL, there's a lot less games than other sports. So True. every other sport does it, right? But I think it emphasizes the point more because you see the NHL, the last two games, the NBA, the MLB has 162 games, so it's more sprinkled throughout the year. But load management isn't a huge NFL thing. It really only is for Week 18. Yeah, but it's one of eight. It's one of only 18 weeks that you have to maximize profit. Now, the NFL doesn't need profit. It's obviously the biggest revenue stream. It's just interesting because, they should try and find a way to manage that, considering that obviously a lot of these players aren't going to play for that last week. I don't know.
Exactly. I think when you look at Week 18, every single matchup, you could have said, okay, well, this team's going to win, this team's going to win. They're resting guys. It just wasn't as entertaining. I know football fans are going to love football either way, and they're going to watch their favorite teams. But in terms of an actual product on the field, in previous years, we've had Week 18s where play to get in for the playoffs. That kind of game is really selling in a Week 18. And it's unfortunate that we didn't have anything like that this year.
Not really. A lot of obviously divisional matchups, but nothing really exciting. There was just a couple of points I wanted to make quickly. You mentioned Carson Wentz. I don't want to see him ever again. Just in general.
I understand.
You have obviously, look, the Chiefs, we just said it. They're resting so many players. You have still Noah Gray at tight end, who's he's probably the best backup tight end in the league. Carson Steele, like Juju Smith-Schuster, not the number one guys, but to put up 0 points, and it's only happened twice this year, and you're the Kansas City Chiefs, like you should still be able to put up some type of points. So that's kind of crazy. Now, sticking with them, Patrick Mahomes is going to have 23 days off. Played Christmas Day, didn't play week 18. That's scary, right? Right. So that's scary.
It's over 3 weeks. It's too much rest, in my opinion. I think he's gonna. They're probably gonna win the divisional round, but I don't think they're gonna go to a Super Bowl this year. And I'll save every prediction for later in the show. But I just don't think they're going as far. And I think partly because of how much rest they're having. Like, game action is game action. You can't replicate it. You can try to replicate it, but in practice, you're never going to go as full tilt as what you would go in a game. And I don't care what any coach says, especially when it comes playoff time, you're not going to push your guys risking injury. Why would you rest them in week 18 then? Why? So that's where I'm at.
No, I think it's fair. And you know what? I think a lot of people are really interested to see the first Chiefs game, whoever they play. Steelers, it'll be the Chargers or the Texans or something along those lines. And they'll probably dominate. Just 2 quick points before we move on to the MVP race here. Detroit looks scary, holding the Vikings obviously to a season-low 9 points. But they get guys like Alex Anzalone back. They get Ifeatu Melifonwu, who played safety. He's a pretty decent guy, played the last few games.
Good job.
Yeah, I nailed it. I had to write some phonetics, but we're moving in the right direction. They're getting a lot of their defense back, which was obviously the biggest sort of pillar for them, or biggest hurdle for them to sort of jump over as the season ends. And they'll get some rest as well. So that was massive. And then I just wanted to shout out Mike Evans. Just exciting to see him. Obviously happy to see him get his 1,000 yards for the 11th straight season, tying Jerry Rice. He had that 5-yard catch from Baker Mayfield. I think because he was a veteran, he got a little bit of space there. Like, it didn't seem like a lot of people were covering him on that play. But I want to also shout out the Bucs. I don't know if there's a social media team or just the Bucs like marketing side in general. They had like a 7-minute video on their website that just followed Mike Evans from that play all the way to him walking back in the dressing room, and then the speech from Todd Bowles and everything. I'd recommend watching it. It was cool. It was just cool to kind of watch all the people congratulate him. He was clearly like really humble, but more than anything, he was happy. Like, what a great weekend to pull those 1,000 yards and then obviously clinch the NFC South. So I just want to shout him out.
And like, I saw a couple of people that said like, "Oh, wow, you really gave him a chip play at the end of the game to get to 1,000 yards. Like, that was kind of BS." Well, no, he got injured this year. He only played 13 games. He would have hit 1,000 yards in a regular season. He definitely deserved to get there. He worked his ass off to get there. Like, he's tied one of the best ever, or if not the best ever, wide receiver for most 1,000 yards receiving yards in a row at 11, and people are going to try to discredit the 11th year because he played 13 games and they gave him a chip pass at the end of the game. No, give him flowers, man. This guy has been through it. He proves time and time again why he's on his way to becoming a Hall of Fame wide receiver, and I want to give him props. And then I want to go back just like for a quick second on your Detroit. You can see why these guys love playing for Dan Campbell. Like, they absolutely love playing for him, and they will literally come back with it from a broken arm and play for this man because they'll run through a brick wall because of the way that he coaches. Like, David Montgomery could have been out for the whole year. He's expected to be back for the playoffs, and that is crazy. That's just crazy to me that he will be back. Like, I'm just thinking from a coaching perspective for Detroit, they're going to be lucky if they don't lose both of their assistant coaches or coordinators this offseason, like Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, I believe. Like, both of them should be going. Both of them are head coaches. Both of them deserve head coaches spots in the NFL, and both of them should be gone this offseason. They will be so lucky, Detroit, I'm talking about, if one of them comes back. If one of them comes back, they might go for another Super Bowl run next year.
Yeah. You know what? We'll talk MVP in a second. I think those are fair points, but you mentioned the coaches. So I think it's a great transition into some of the coaches that were lost on Black Monday and the days following. So you have Gerard Mayo fired from the New England Patriots after one season. Antonio Pierce, same deal. They actually fired the Raiders, fired Antonio Pierce, kept Tom Telesco, and then got rid of Tom Telesco today. So sort of an interesting change of pace there. I don't know what's
After
going
they said
on.
he was fine.
Yeah, they said
okay.
he was going to be safe, and then they dropped him today.
I never believe those things, especially in the NFL. It's like, if you hear you're safe, if you hear you're safe, I feel like that's almost worse. Like, you'd rather no one say anything about it.
Yeah, you're like, don't talk about me. Just leave me out of it.
Yeah, let me just rest for a day. Who was it in sort of quick transition? Derek Lalonde got fired right after Christmas. Yeah, so Derek Lalonde got fired from the Red Wings. Boxing Day or the day after. It's like, maybe give the guy a couple days with his family before ruining his Christmas.
And then also Jacksonville's owner was on a Zoom call.
Yes.
And he said, the reporter asked him, after they fired Doug Peterson, the reporter asked him if the new head coach said, we don't agree with what the GM views, would you consider removing him? And the owner said, yeah, no problem. I would remove the GM if the head coach gave me a good reason why. Only problem is the GM is sitting on the Zoom call right beside the head coach or the owner.
Oh my God.
Like,
yeah.
What a terrible run organization. You wonder why they can't come out of the mud. Like, they're just stuck there because of things like this.
I wonder if that's a product of, like, obviously we're recording right now on gallery mode, but you can record on speaker mode. And what happens on the Zoom call is if you have 20 people on the call, you have the speaker, and then you have all of the bubbles of people on the right. Maybe the GM was all the way at the bottom and he didn't realize. And then he's scrolling down and 10 minutes later and Buddy's sitting there with his arms crossed. I don't know. That sounds like a complete mishap.
It was bad.
So, but you brought up Doug Peterson. He was also fired. So just quickly, there's 6 coaching vacancies. I mentioned those 3 teams there, but I'll also add the Saints, Bears, and Jets on this list. What do you think is the most desirable destination for a coach for this 2025 upcoming season?
Personally, I'm going to say my New England Patriots, only because Drake May looks like a franchise QB, and he looks special. Special. This guy has it all. This guy has the arm power. This guy has the accuracy. Everyone was complaining about his footwork coming out of college. Man, his footwork looks great. I can't complain about that. He knows where to decide. He's going with the ball quicker than what I've seen any quarterback for the New England Patriots at post Tom Brady era. And then personally, looking at the QB class for this year, I think he might be the second best or best QB. I get it, Jaden Daniels, you're looking at first year, and Bo Nix, and you're going to say, oh, these 2 quarterbacks had a better year. They're much better than Drake May. Well, take a second look at it, because Drake May literally had no one to throw to. He had McDonald's drive-through workers throwing the ball. He was throwing the ball to McDonald's drive-through workers. He was working with the cashiers for his offensive line. He had no one. He had absolutely no one on offense. He had absolutely no one to help him. Just wait till he gets an offensive-minded head coach as well, because Jerod Mayo, I'm not going to rip Jerod Mayo, because Jerod Mayo was put into a kind of hard situation with the roster that he was given. But he's not an offensive-minded head coach, leading to not getting the most out of your offense. In my personal opinion, when you have an offensive guy like Drake May, I think it's very important to get an offensive guy. So I think the Patriots are the most attractive job in the NFL, and then I would go Bears number 2 solely on the purpose of that same point, the offense. The offense is already locked and loaded. All you need is an offensive line there. You have the outside weapons, and then you also have a running back there, an established running back in Swift. So I'm thinking the Patriots and then Bears would be my number 1 and 2 right now.
I couldn't agree more. I actually have New England as number 1 also, which is what I was saying earlier in terms of fanning Justin being like, dude, everything is about you this pod. But it's a fair point. And just to add to that, Drake May obviously is a big reason. That's kind of the biggest thing that coaches want when they're taking away or sort of assessing a job is, do they have a QB? Check. You got Drake May. They have the number 4 overall pick, which is huge. Now, all of the 6 teams I mentioned are in the top 10, but the Patriots are the highest of that class. Now, whether they get Travis Hunter if he falls to them, or if they take an offensive tackle, which I think is the biggest option. I think Kelvin Banks is the big guy that they're looking at.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of talent up there, and I think they're going to be able to take either Travis Hunter or an O lineman to kind of stiffen what they have in front of Drake May.
Yeah.
But also, dude, the cap space is actually insane.
Insane. 130 million coming this season. Like
130.
They have so much to work with. You could go and get an offensive lineman. If you don't get Travis Hunter, I personally think that's the guy they should draft if he falls to them.
Agreed.
But if they don't get Travis Hunter, that's completely fine now, because you can go and you can still drop the bag on T. Higgins and go get him in free agency, and then go get an O lineman and bolster that O line in the draft. Sorry, but man, oh man, like the Patriots, I just want to like talk about this draft for 1 second, because they annoy me so much. Like, they're the most attractive job, and I'm happy that like where they're at right now, but when Sunday hit, man, I was pissed. Like, I was so mad, because if you are going to fire the Gerard Mayo an hour after the game, an hour, you're not telling me you didn't know going into week 18 that you were firing him.
Yeah.
You knew going into week 18 you were firing him. So you knew there was a chance that he was going to go out and try to win the game, which why not do that? For him, totally makes sense. Put your coaching credibility on the line and show to someone, hey, I can still coach. I didn't get a great chance here, but I can still coach. Same thing that happened in Houston 2 years ago. So they go win the game. Totally expected. But Robert Kraft, if you knew that they were going to go and try to win the game, why did you let him coach in week 18? Why?
Yeah.
Just why? Why didn't you just fire him 1 week before week 18? Like, you had the number 1 overall pick. You know what you could have done with that? Trade it back. You weren't going to draft the number 1 overall pick. No one thought you would. You were going to trade it back for a desperate team that wanted a QB to move up. You'd move back to like 2 or 3, get an extra first round pick, do some incredible work with that $130 million cap space, and then draft Travis Hunter and maybe draft an O-lineman in the same draft. No. We don't do that. We instead let Gerard Mayo coach week 18, go back to the number 4 pick now, and then only have the hopes of getting Travis Hunter, who might fall to us. The Patriots are in a great situation, but it could have been that much better, in my opinion.
I agree. I wouldn't be like, you're a fan of the team, so obviously you're a little bit more like your heart's involved a little bit more. When I assess it from more of a like bystander's perspective, I still think number 4. I mean, look, I can't disagree, because they may have even told Gerard Mayo, yo, this is your last game.
Yeah, they to have a press release that was set up and minute after he was fired, an hour after the game, you're not telling me that they didn't know going into week 18 that they were planning on firing him. You know what they were probably planning on doing? Firing him on Monday when everyone else got fired. But then he went out and won the game, and Robert Kraft was like, no, you're gone right now. Like,
you're not even going back in the locker room. Give me your
basket. Like, what? And then you made him do his post-game presser as well? That made no sense to me. Sorry, that just made no sense.
It's definitely weird. And you know what, though? I think just taking it to New England as a destination in general for a coach, it is a weird move on the Robert Kraft end, and like obviously the front office to follow that suit. But I also think that when you're looking at a front office, Woody Johnson and the New York Jets, I don't want to deal with him. I don't even really want to deal with the McCaskies. I know the fact
you don't
Chicago,
want to. Not
you don't want to. And even though Ryan Poles might be like,
Ryan Poles is garbage.
Some good moves. I think he made some good moves. This year I think he's put in a tough position because the owners there probably have a lot more say than they're giving Brian Poles the opportunity to do. But if you're going into a situation as a head coach where your GM might be on the rocks, then what security do you have at all moving forward if you get hired there, right? So
and that's fair.
I don't know. Yeah.
The one thing I was going to say is the one thing I'll give Robert Kraft props for is admitting a mistake that he got wrong and changing it right away. He does not want to lose. He cannot stand losing anymore. He wants to win. He's been a born winner with the 6 Super Bowl championships we've already gotten with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. But guess who's not like that? Jerry Jones. And Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy relationship, I don't think he can fire him. I really don't. I think he doesn't have the guts in him to fire him anymore. I think
he'll let it pass.
He's just gonna let it pass.
Expire.
He's gonna let the contract expire. Maybe he'll bring him back. Who knows? But I don't think Jerry Jones is like Robert Kraft. I think Robert Kraft has different expectations for the New England Patriots, and that's the one thing I can give him props for. Unlike other organizations like Woody Johnson, like you mentioned, and the McCaskies, they're just terrible run organizations.
And they might just remain that way. We'll see how the 2025 season comes into fruition after the playoffs. But we do probably have to move on. But just for MVP thoughts, Justin, maybe 30 seconds or less, just like, who is your MVP this year?
Listen, it's got to be Josh Allen, man. Like, he played unbelievable the whole year, top to bottom. Week 1 to week 17, I'm not going to include week 18 because he did
one snap.
He played his one snap to continue his streak at starting games. But other than that, he was the most dominant player on the field. He was the most explosive player on the field. Anytime you got him outside the pocket, you didn't know if he was going to throw a 40-yard pass on you or he was going to run for 40 yards. And just like the overall season, like he had a couple like Lamar, to me, he didn't have like those MVP type moments. Lamar Jackson had 2 of them, one against Kansas City, and then the other was in the snow game when he threw it off himself and got the receiving and passing touchdown in that same game. That moment was so cool. And it was just the big one, though, was the Kansas City one where he absolutely single-handedly won that game for them.
Yeah.
But I have to butt in here.
Jump in,
because
Sarah.
I agree with Justin. I do think it is Josh Allen, but you're missing a very important point. He obviously started doing really well.
Yeah, I know where you're
after
going.
he got engaged to Haley Steinfeld, and then from there, it was kind of like his game just really took off. So I think she's been a big piece of it. So I don't know if there's like MVP adjacent, but
support
maybe that
on
award
and
goes
off the
to her.
field, eh?
Yeah,
yes,
supporting
exactly.
cast.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's fair.
So Sarah, the big thing in a lot of sports, I feel like in the NFL too, is even this is not true. Maybe next year, the year after, but baby bumps. So sometimes NFL or whatever players will have a kid and then they'll score a touchdown the next game or they'll score a goal in hockey. So
you mean dad bump? When you said baby bump, I was like, are you talking about her baby bump?
Physically someone getting a baby bump? No, that would be
that's what I thought you were saying.
Like bump in like enthusiasm.
Dad
like,
I'm there.
You're with, you got it. So we'll keep an eye out for those two, Haley and Josh. Look, I agree with the both of you. I just think when you look at the title of MVP, right? I mean, if you were to take the two players off of their respective teams and have them play out the season, I think Baltimore still makes the playoffs. I don't think Buffalo has a chance in hell. I just don't see any world, and you can take away Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis from 2023 and head into Buffalo this season where it was supposed to be a mini rebuild year and Josh Allen completely dominates. He threw only 6 interceptions this year to his 18 in 2023. So his ball handling was a little bit better. 7.7 average pass per yard or yards per pass, which is incredible. And just the way he took over games and you were able to beat Kansas City and Detroit Lions, which are like they had collectively 4 losses on the season and 2 of them were to the Buffalo Bills. So I just think kudos to him. I do think it opens the door to the idea of most valuable player and also having an award for like just most dominant player of the year, like 2 separate awards, because Joe Burrow realistically had the most.
Yeah, Joe Burrow's
season.
The MVP. Like Joe Burrow, if they're in the playoffs, Joe Burrow's the MVP, and that's unfortunate for Joe Burrow because he was carrying the Bengals back from a 1-5 start to the season to putting them in a position to even make the playoffs is just incredible. But it's unfortunate that they didn't make the playoffs. And the MVP is unfortunately an award that is awarded to someone that makes the playoffs. That's just the way it is.
And I don't know if it'll change, but the idea of having maybe a different award for the best player in general might be something to consider. But
100%.
All that to say. Welcome back. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us. This is the second half of Second Look Sports Podcast, episode 4. We're going to jump right from the NFL into hockey with the NHL. More specifically, up in Quebec with the Montreal Canadiens. We mentioned it would be a Justin episode, but Sarah's also included, as it's Sarah and Justin's favorite team in Montreal. And rightfully so, we'll be discussing their recent win streak, which is basically 8 in their last 10. So the most impressive part about the Canadiens, I will give them flowers. And although they've won 8 of their last 10 games, 4 of those games were victories over the past 4 Stanley Cup champions. And more specifically than that, they were all on the road. And then they come home to Montreal on Amazon Prime Monday night, play the Vancouver Canucks, win 5-4 in overtime. So incredible stuff all around. There's some notes I have, but for the most part, I want to let you guys speak your truth about your teams. Justin, what do you have on the squad, especially with some of the young guys so far?
Listen, you're forgetting the fact that they beat the St. Louis Blues too. So 5 out of 5, last defending Stanley Cup champions as well. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
I don't know about that.
2019.
No, 2019 and then
Tampa Bay
back to back. Yeah. The stat I saw was 4 for 4. So I guess maybe somebody was wrong. All right.
They also went 5 for 5. But
still pretty impressive.
No one like St. Louis, no one's on that team from that 2019 Stanley Cup winning team. So I understand, but just had to throw that out there. The team has impressed me. Like they've impressed me in a way, and it's not solely, but like majority of it has been since Patrick Laine has entered the lineup. He gave them an extra boost of energy that they did not have before, and I think inserting him into a line where, in Montreal, one of the things they've been struggling with for the last couple of years going through this rebuild is not having like a top line and not having a second line, not having guys like separate themselves. I feel like they would have to rotate through all 4 lines and play like equal time. No, like right now, it is a lot better and it's a lot more clear who your top line is, who the top guys are. They're actually producing like top line guys right now. And I think Patrick Laine being inserted into that power play also helps guys like Cole Caulfield free up for more opportunities, because now you have a lethal shot in Patrick Laine that you have to defend from where Alex Ovechkin shoots the puck from his office. And then you have Cole Caulfield's wicked release. Like that release is so lethal. And I'm just really impressed with how the team is performing in total. But then you got to give credit to the goaltenders as well. Dobish's looked insane. They have a stud. They have a stud there. And then they also have Sam Montembeault, who has been incredible since being named to the 4 Nations roster. And he's proven why he should have been one of those 3 goalies. And then they also have Jacob Fowler on the way. I know he's a little bit away, but still, that guy looks insane. They are set up for the future in goaltending. In my personal opinion, Jacob Fowler looks like he can be a true number 1 and could be very, very dominant, close to a Jake Ottinger, in my opinion, when watching him play. But
that's a fair point.
Yeah, like he just looks incredible. And then to mention the fact of that they won 8 out of 10 and the way that they're doing it as well, the way that you said that they're doing it, going on the road, going to right after Christmas, going down to Florida, and then shutting out the Panthers, the defending Stanley Cup champions, walking over to Tampa, beating them, not just beating them like in OT, the 5-2, that's a big win. And then going on the road, traveling 3 different time zones out to LA to take on Vegas, being down 2-0 and showing grit and coming back on New Year's Eve. That was a well-deserved party if they had one on New Year's Eve, because they showed a lot of character in all these wins. The only game where they didn't, and you know what? You win 8 out of 10, it's okay. The Chicago Blackhawks game, that was a terrible game to watch. But then they rebound the next night against Colorado. And they've just showed time and time again throughout the stretch that they're not to be counted out in any game, and they're going to play hard for the whole 60 minutes.
Yeah, no, all very fair points, and you represented the team well. Sarah, give you some light. How have you felt like this team has performed? Any notes on Montreal?
Yeah, well, I feel like Justin covered a lot of the bases there, but even what I was thinking about is today I was listening to a media availability from Martin St. Louis, and he was talking about the team and where they're at in the standing now and just this hot streak that they're on and what that will look like potentially. And of course, all the media, the reporters are asking him, okay, so playoffs, like, do you see this in the future? What do you guys think? And someone asked him, do you think like the games just get harder from here? And he was like, the games have already been hard. We've already been
Yeah,
playing a lot of hard hockey. And so he was kind of saying it doesn't matter what people think or the streak that's coming or where we are in the standings. We got to play each game as it is. And he was getting so passionate in this media availability, like hitting the desk. He's like, we just need to focus. And so I think that as long as the Habs can continue to do that for the next couple of months and these games, they can really start to contend for a playoff spot. And I mean, I would love to see that, of course.
I
yeah, and the league, I think the league would too. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think the one thing that you have to like give Marty St. Louis credit for is the fact of at the beginning of the season, they're dead last in the NHL and they're struggling, and everyone's starting to call for his head, saying, you know what, maybe it's time to go. Maybe the Marty St. Louis experiment is not working. Giving him a head coaching job right out of the gate is not actually valid. Well, I'm personally at the beginning of the season, I was not even close to that. I was on the boat of this year is going to be this year, and it's not going to be any expectations. Next year, if Marty St. Louis did not start performing and they didn't start seeing results, then I think you can start saying, okay, now we have to think about moving on from Marty St. Louis. But
hmm,
even this year, I the whole time like coming into him like there's no expectations on him because the roster is just trying to learn how to win right now, and
big
he
time.
is developed them into a team that is learning how to win. They are winning in so many different ways. They're getting it done in shootouts. They're getting it done on comebacks. They're getting it done by dominating you. They're getting it done by goaltender play. They're getting it done by their forwards actually scoring, and I think that Marty St. Louis is a big factor in that and actually connecting with the players.
I think those are all fair points, and I do want to touch on the playoffs. But you brought up media availability. We're talking about Martin St. Louis, and like he's a former player. He knows what the players want, especially some of the younger guys, some of the smaller guys, and Cole Caulfield, even guys like Nick Suzuki, quiet leader, someone who I feel like a lot of people look to and think this guy doesn't seem like he's got a lot of personality, but I'm sure once he gets into the room with the guys, he's a little bit more vocal and leads a little bit more by example rather than other team captains. I look to guys like Quinn Hughes, who is a little bit quieter, but seems to lead on the ice and in the dressing room. But in terms of media availability, it's the whole idea of winning on the road and then coming home and sustaining that same excellence. So I know there's been a lot of times this year where Montreal's had road trips, they've come home and then they've just completely stunk.
Yeah, exactly.
But Caulfield had a good point, and he confirmed to Eric Engels. Honestly, we talk about it all the time. We had multiple times this season where we came back and laid an egg, and there's no excuse for coming back home and doing that. And so obviously the Canadians now winning that game in Vancouver is a big portion of, okay, they're coming back home and they're showing the Bell Center sort of some love. But I also want to suggest that even moving forward, they had a break, so they played Monday. They don't play till Friday, so tomorrow, I
Yeah.
guess today when you'll be listening to this, they are in Washington and then they come home to play Dallas. So they've already played some pretty hard games. You referenced that, Sarah, that Martin St. Louis was already like, okay, like we're playing the hardest we can. It's only going to get more difficult. They've beat up on some teams that they're going to be ahead of in the playoff race, and then they went and played some of the Western Conference teams and the teams that are at the top of the division of late. Will they make the playoffs? My point before we pass it off to anybody is I'll be honest, I don't see them sustaining this pace in terms of a playoff spot. They're fighting a lot of teams like Boston, even Columbus somehow, Ottawa. They're playing a lot of teams that I just feel like Columbus doesn't count in that group, but it's just a fact that they're in the playoff spot right now. They're playing with a lot of house money, I think, right now, and they're playing teams that have a little bit more experience. And I just don't see them heading into the latter half of the season, continuing this exact same pace. But my biggest thought process is you mentioned, Justin, they're playing meaningful hockey. And ultimately, I think it's a win if they continue any sort of 500 pace at this point and push for a playoff spot. My idea is I would love to see them in there simply because the league would benefit from more Canadian, well, maybe not from more Canadian teams, but Toronto, Montreal, seeing those guys in there is incredible. I don't know if they sustain it, but look, like the Dobish kid you mentioned, it's incredible having that guy on the board. But ultimately, it's okay, you're playing this way for now. But what happens come trade deadline? Like you have some UFAs in what Dvorak, Jake Evans, Joel Armia, like some real good bottom 6 guys that are obviously important to the team. Savard is likely to get moved. I'm just curious what they do, because are you going to go push for success like the Philadelphia Flyers from last year and other teams that are sort of making a push for playoffs? Or is this good enough for this year? Because I look towards teams like Buffalo and Detroit and Ottawa. Ottawa's finally making a push this year after years of like, this is the year of making the push. And Montreal is already seemingly ahead of that in terms of their process. So I feel like that's a win in and of itself. I'm curious to see what they do at the deadline for either going for a playoff race, or if they say, let's pump the brakes and let's try and just kind of retool a little bit and then go a little bit harder next year.
I don't really know what they're going to do at the deadline per se. I think I have something on that a little later as well.
Sure, of course.
But for the playoffs, I'm going to counterpoint you. I do think they're going to make the playoffs, and I think they're not going to be a top 3 team in the Atlantic. It's going to be a wild card spot, probably number 2. I just think the way that they're playing hockey right now and the brand of hockey that they're playing is just so contagious, and it's contagious throughout the whole team. You can feel it. The Carrier trade that they made, it's such a good hockey trade for them, only because now you have guys playing with the proper guys. Like before, you used to have guys like that it just had in the lineup because like you're trying to force feed them in the lineup and like they didn't really work together. But now you have 3 pairs that actually work together, and every guy benefits the other guy that's on that pair for defensemen. And then up front, you have guys that complement each other on lines now. Like Josh Anderson, you're not expecting much out of him, but on a line with Brendan Gallagher and stuff, playing in that bottom 6 role now, that bottom 6 line or bottom 6 is pretty tough and pretty big, and they're willing to go after and do their jobs of forechecking and getting and just hitting people, like, and just getting the body on them and getting the puck out and get it cycling. Like, to me, the bottom 6 is a really, really solid bottom 6 that a lot of teams are looking for. And that's something that the Montreal Canadiens have. They might not have the top end talent like a Kirill Kaprizov on their top line or Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner on their top line, but they still have good enough guys on the top end to put the puck in the back of the net on such a high pace that it doesn't really matter in that case. I just think the back end from bottom 6 to the actual defense is where the Montreal Canadiens are going to see a better second half of the season that other teams battling for the playoff spot, like the Pittsburgh Penguins, for example, might not get.
They're 1 point
Justin,
out of a playoff spot, and go ahead, sir.
I was going to say, Justin, you're that sure that they're going to make the playoffs, then I want to make a bet with you.
Okay.
So I have a Montreal Canadiens onesie, like full piece. Like I think there's feet attached to it, like fully zip up, hood, everything. If they don't make the playoffs, will you bet that will wear that for an entire day, like out in public? Like we'll get some shots of you at the mall in your full like Montreal Canadiens
I do
onesie.
Are
you sure?
Yeah.
Like if you make the bet on this podcast, like it is rule.
Yeah, I'll do it.
It's law. It is serious.
It's okay.
Like doing a handshake. Are you
I'm
sure?
game.
Okay.
Yeah,
I have that in writing now.
Sign the paper.
I like that. If they don't, we'll have to find either a punishment or we'll have to go the other side. I think
that is the punishment.
No, that is the punishment.
If they don't, the punishment is that he has to wear this in public.
Oh, sorry. If they do,
it's fine. If they do, there's no punishment.
This just we're exciting.
What is the punishment if they do?
There's no stakes.
If they do, Alex has to wear the onesie.
Yeah.
If they don't make the playoffs, I have to wear the onesie. That's the deal.
If they do make the playoffs, we're just excited. That's what we're doing.
Yeah,
that's not a two-side bet.
I have multiple of these onesies. I have 6 of these onesies.
Why would I take a two-sided bet? Why would I take a two-sided bet?
My uncle is like a huge Habs fan. Anyway, if they do make the playoffs, we'll get a shot of like all of second looks in the onesies together.
I can't wait to see them not make the playoffs for so many reasons now. This is awesome.
That's great. It's amazing.
They're 1 point out, like I was mentioning, of a playoff spot right now. A couple teams have some in hand, but they're fighting for it. Hudson for the Calder Trophy, Justin. Do you think he wins it?
No. Celebrini just on too incredible of a pace, and even if he missed 10 games at the beginning of the year, if he doesn't miss any more time, if Celebrini misses like probably another 5 games, I think then you have to say like maybe not. Like maybe it becomes Hudson and Mitchkoff's race. And in
Yeah.
that case, I think Hudson then wins that just because of how well of a defenseman he actually has come into. And he's playing 23 minutes a night in his rookie year. He's and you know what? I get picked on this all the time, but he's head shaking people on their ankles every single night. Like he is talented. He is beyond talented. He is a franchise defenseman, and he has come into his own this year. And he's already overtaken Mike Matheson on the #1 power play, and he has the first to 30 points as a defenseman. He's not even a forward. He's leading all forwards as well. Like I just think at the end of the year, it's going to come down to him and Celebrini if Celebrini stays healthy, and Celebrini will end up with the more votes.
Yeah, I agree with that. Celebrini's just a cerebral player, 28 points in 31 games, missed 10 less. He has played 10 less games basically than Lane Hudson. Almost said Cole Hudson. Not even the best in the family, Justin. I don't know how you can say he wins the Calder Trophy. Exciting stuff. We'll stick with hockey. We'll move over to the PWHL in the midst of their second season so far. Some of the PWHL Takeover Tour is beginning, and it begins in Seattle. So, Sarah, I'm just kind of curious, like first and foremost, maybe go ahead.
We have some breaking news. What do you have for us here? We have some breaking news. Sarah, do you want to say it?
Sure. The Jays have signed Vladdy, guys.
Not to the big one. Not to the 10-year, $500 million contract that we're all hoping for. No,
get out.
The 1-year, $28.5 million deal that avoids arbitration. So you know what? You know what? Like, just a quick note on this, because I know we want to hit PWHL. That tells me the Jays and Vlad's camp is a lot closer than what people, I think, were estimating when they said $100 million off. Because if they went to arbitration and it came out like the Jays were looking to offer 21 or 20, and Vlad's looking for 28 or 30, and they can't settle, then you're worried about next year. Like that puts like even more pressure on for next year, signing him to a long-term deal, because you can already tell that the franchise and the player are so far off. But this deal right here that gets it done before arbitration. Last year they went to arbitration. This year they get it done before arbitration. 1 year, $28 million, I think, tells me that they're leaning in the right direction towards a long-term extension.
I think this is just big for the narrative of the front office. I obviously love the fact that they were able to get the sign, and I agree with you there, Judd. I also just typed in Jay sign arbitration. Arbitration is the name of the guy they just signed. So I'm clearly all over the place right now. All that to say, I think that's a big win for the front office. But man, like I just saw Shai tweet that out. I don't know if he broke it directly, Davidi, but that's listen, we'll take that based on the extensions right now. That's all fair. Crazy stuff. We'll have to chat a little bit more about that.
It's per Shai Davidi. Sportsnet just tweeted it's per Shai Davidi.
Let's go.
So
good for the Jays.
At least they got that. Like, at least you think that they're closer than what reports have come out that they actually are.
That's a little bit of a win. We'll take small wins. Sarah, PWHL Takeover Tour, but also just the season 2 in general. Such a great PWHL season last year. They've obviously extended the season a little bit longer, starting at the end of November this year. But just overall thoughts to start of how you viewed the season so far. And then if you want to get into some of the Takeover Tour excitement, like by all means, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on those.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's been kind of, I feel like, a slow start to the season just because they had a little bit of an international break, kind of almost like 2 to 3 weeks in. So now it kind of finally feels like things are fully underway. But it's cool. We have Montreal at the top of the standings right now, which is, I think, where Marie-Philippe Plan is like made to be. So it's cool to see her up there with the team. And then, kind of my biggest takeaway so far this season is looking at New York and just the pair that they have there, and Alex Carpenter and Sarah Fillier. We knew when Fillier went first overall in the draft, like, okay, she's something special, but man, like she is topping the standings in almost every category, especially like points and goals, etc. And just seeing her and Carpenter play together is insane. So it's kind of nice to see again the Sirens taking that step up. I know they struggled a lot last season, so it's cool to see New York a little bit holding their own, especially. But even we just had two of the first games, the Takeover Tour. We saw them in Seattle, and then we saw them in Vancouver just last night, and yeah, that was really cool. It's interesting because, pardon?
Third highest attendance ever, 19,038 fans at the Vancouver game last night.
Yeah, more fans went out to see that game than have gone out to see a single regular season Canucks game this year. So I don't know, guys.
That's pretty crazy.
Women's hockey, yeah. Women's hockey belongs on the West Coast. What can I say?
They definitely oversold the building last night and fit everyone possible into it.
Yeah, seriously. But it's cool. Like this Takeover Tour so far has been almost like a Montreal Victoire tour as well, because they played in both of the games. And so it's exciting. Yeah, just seeing some of the top talent in the world in women's hockey, and then bringing that all over, especially to the West Coast that hasn't really seen women's hockey in almost 10 years. I feel like the most recent meaningful game played out in Vancouver was probably the 2010 Olympics, when Canada got gold there. But then, yeah, just kind of seeing some of those same players or people around the game back for the Takeover Tour. What's that face?
You're missing 2011 Game 7 Stanley Cup final.
I'm talking about women's hockey. Women's hockey.
Oh, okay. You're just talking. I thought you meant like meaningful games in Vancouver over the last like 10, 15 years.
No. The most meaningful women's hockey game would have been in 2010 at the Olympics.
Yeah.
But then, and even a bunch of the same players that were on that gold medal winning team back in 2010, they got to go because they're still in and around the sport, maybe helping with PWHL, covering it, that sort of thing. So it was a bit of a reunion tour of a sense as well. So
listen, I really enjoy seeing the top end talent, and I think the PWHL is doing an excellent job of realizing who they have to market to the audience, and that would be Marie-Philippe Poulin. And they're marketing her everywhere, and they're doing it correctly. They're getting her and like Sarah Nurse, one of their other biggest stars. They're putting them in all the biggest spots to try and grow the game the quickest they can. The one thing I think the PWHL needs to do, and I know they talked about this, but they need to announce some expansion teams, because one thing I think the PWHL is going to find even this year, in a society where we're in 2025 now, everything gets boring, right? So what I mean by that is when you play the same
Are you bored of women's sports already?
No. When you play the same 5 teams every time, I think fans are going to start to not enjoy watching the same teams. I think fans like to see different storylines develop throughout a season, and I think that they like to see all these new different things that happen when they're going for a certain night. Like for example, like the WNBA, they're expanding. They're up to 14 teams now. You can see it every single night that they play. There's more storylines, there's more games. Like it's not just like Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese, it's like Caitlin Clark versus every single team in the league. And the one thing the PWHL only has right now is 6 teams, and you can only sell the same games so many times. I think that's a fair point to say. And then I think
I agree, but I think they're doing a lot of creative things to make those same matchups more interesting each time. Like 100%. This whole tour, like, okay, we have Toronto, we have Montreal, let's send them to Vancouver and let's see how that game goes there, right? That's a much more exciting version of the same matchup we're going to see multiple times this season.
Yeah, 100%. I think one thing to think about is there might be only 5 teams, but it's the 6 way that you have, or like 5 other teams that you can play. 6 teams, but 5 other teams that you can only play. I think you have to think about the way that you're marketing it, and the PWHL is doing a great job. I just think in a society where we're at, where like social media and everything happens, and our brains, like you literally scroll on this thing for 2 seconds and you want to go to the next thing. I think in a world where we live in now, it is a lot different than 1918 or like when the NHL had 6 teams
Mm.
and you would only see those teams the night that they would come to town. Like, it's a lot different. You could get a lot more excited for a thing like that because it only came around so often and you couldn't see it on TV and you didn't have it at the fingertips everywhere that you looked. That's my point. I think that overall, where the PWHL is at an amazing point, I think though they need to get 2 more teams in the league next year. One being Vancouver and one being either Quebec City or Pittsburgh. If you want to go one in the States and one in Canada again.
Yeah, I'm more on Sarah's point. I like the enthusiasm you're coming with, and I think they're all fair points, Justin, of like capitalizing on this excitement with the PWHL. Like, when we talk about Marie-Philippe Poulin, she's 33 years old, so it's important to market her now and gain as much excitement about her performance. And obviously, rightfully so, she's probably the best women's hockey player that's ever existed, if not top 3 at least. But she's aging out of the sport and will at some point you have to market her as best as possible. And she's not near the point where she's tailing off clearly. That goal when she was like falling.
Oh yeah, that goal last night was insane.
It's like highlight reel like for any women or men's sport this year in hockey.
Exactly.
From expansion perspective, I think there's 2 reasons why I disagree. One is you just don't want to get over your skis. And what I mean by that is if you expand a little bit too quickly, you do create a lot more narratives, which is exciting, but you have to look at the talent pool that I think is in women's sports right now. It took so long for the WNBA to market properly and to expand. And now obviously Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and all these incredible players are coming in and marketing the game better. But if you expand to the point where you're not getting the best players playing in the PWHL and the league itself gets diluted, and then you lose some of the excitement and actually the top end talent that's playing in the league. I know someone like an Ailish Forfar, who is one of the Sportsnet 590 personalities, used to play back in the day, I believe it was the CWHL and previous leagues, and said like, there's no chance I could strap on skates now and play. Like, it's that good.
Yeah, it's definitely fair.
So I just think that, and the idea of like expanding, it's exciting to see them expand to like a Vancouver and see some of the best attendance numbers. But I worry about creating a team there because then your travel schedule starts throwing a lot of economics into the mix.
It's one thing that's more difficult.
One of the things that's hard right now is obviously money and finances. Like right now, the league owns all the teams. And so there's only so much money to go around, and they have to expand in a way that also allows for like more ownership and different kind of finances to get like injected into the league so that the PWHL can be sustainable. Like when you think about how the WNBA did it, they had a lot of expansion early on as well. But then when it came around time for different owners to buy teams from the league, we saw a lot of teams have to drop off and disappear and get canceled because they didn't have the money or the funding to go with some of that. So I think the PWHL has to look at examples like that from the past and think, okay, how can we expand this? Yes, we know the market's there. Yes, let's come up with ideas to keep bringing the hype and keep making things interesting and keep the conversation going across the entire continent. Let's do that. But at the same time, they got to be smart about how they're going to do the expansion so that it's sustainable in the end. And it's actually bringing women's hockey to your screens, to your arenas, to everywhere long term, as opposed to something that's going to fizzle out quickly.
And I completely agree with that. I think that you have to expand in a smart way. I just think after this season, I think it was smart not to expand after season 1. I really do. I think like season 2, you need to have the same 6 teams. But I think going forward, you have to expand. I think you have so much excitement around this league and you have so much support. You're seeing it everywhere that you're going. And I think that they can take advantage of that. And one thing you guys were talking about was talent pool. Like, players are getting cut this year. Like, veteran players we're trying to hold on one more year from getting cut because they know more teams are coming and they might have a chance of staying around in the league a little bit longer because the talent pool is going to not weaken, but going to open up a little bit more. And then you're going to have new teams come in. And I think that is something that is very, very important. Like getting more players into the league is only going to make the talent better. Like, yeah, you might have some people that, there's some people in the NHL that are fourth liners. Same way it's going to be in the PWHL. But I think playing against the top end talent, it's going to make them better as well. Like when you go play McDavid every night or you go play Poulin, you want to show up with your best game. And I think that is very important. And I think that the PWHL is in a very good place. I think it is. I just hope and I want to see them expand.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. Exciting stuff either way, and also exciting stuff ahead back to the NFL with Super Wildcard Weekend this upcoming Saturday and Sunday. We're going to do some picks and previews on the 6 games that we're expecting to watch. We'll start in the NFC. We have the 2 seed Philadelphia Eagles taking on the 7 seed Green Bay Packers. Eagles are -5. Jordan Love's questionable, but he should be playing. Christian Watson out for the Green Bay Packers. We don't know where Jalen Hurts is. At least I don't. I don't know if there's been any updates as to whether he plans to play. I think I still have the Eagles in this one. I think they're going to have a dominant game. It's hard to beat NFL teams in the league more than once. The Green Bay Packers did it to start the season. It's the green matchup. I just think the defense and the secondary in Philly is too good to pass up. And without being able to stretch the field with Christian Watson, I just see the Eagles kind of taking this one. Justin, I don't know your thoughts on this as well.
Listen, I think the Eagles are going to take this one. Jordan Love does not look great down the stretch of the season. And I think, well, first off, it's going to depend on if Jalen Hurts looks great because, he's been in concussion protocol for the last 2 weeks. So that's kind of important. But overall, I think the Packers will end up coming short in this game. Although 7 seed, 11 wins, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Eagles or Packers, Sarah? Who do you have in this one here?
I also have the Eagles.
Fair enough. Let's roll with it. Sticking on the NFC, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Washington Commanders. I'm really interested in this one. This is the Sunday night game, which I don't think it should have been, but I'm not going to argue. This one's on NBC. Bucks are -3 on their NFC South victory. I don't know. I think this one could go either way. The Bucks in the playoffs are sneaky good. I feel like they sort of come in unassuming and then they pounce. And Baker Mayfield can get really hot really quickly with the weapon in Mike Williams that he has. It's Jaden Daniels' first game in the playoffs. I just don't know if he's going to have that sustained pressure or if the pressure is going to build on him. I think I have the Bucks in a really, really close one, but I think the Commanders somehow will cover that -3 spread. Justin, thoughts?
I'm taking the Bucks. I'm riding with Baker, man. He has been electric all season long. A rookie quarterback in the playoffs. Like, you're gonna hear the narratives. I think Jaden's gonna prove people are wrong about that narrative. Rookie quarterbacks in the playoffs, but I do think that Baker has just proven you can't count him out. You can't count the Bucks out.
Yeah.
Mike Evans is gonna go off again. They're just so good and the only thing that will hold them back is if Todd Bowles has a questionable fourth quarter game management decision once again, where he just decides to do the total opposite thing that any other coach with a brain would do. That's the only way that the Bucks lose this game.
It's very possible. Sarah, Tampa Bay, Bucks, or the Commanders in this one? Who do you have?
I'm also taking the Bucks, and simply because I was doing fantasy football this whole season. I was extremely bad. I'm not a football fan, but one week I was really struggling, hadn't won yet. I picked up Baker Mayfield off of waivers, and he carried my team to my first victory. So I think he can do that in the playoffs as well.
I think he can. I'll give him the credit. We have Minnesota Vikings visiting the LA Rams Monday at 8 p.m. ESPN ABC. Vikings are -1 in this one. I think they should be a little bit more. I'm taking the Vikings in this one. They're going to want to be they're going to be a determined team after that loss in Detroit. I think Sam Darnold has something to prove. They have the weapons, and I think they're going to dominate. I don't know if Matt Stafford is going to be able to continue his playoff success that he's had in the past. So that's my thought. Justin, Vikings, Rams, where we at?
Listen, I'm undecided. I really like the Vikings. Man, the one thing that has me leaning Rams more than the Vikings, even though I wouldn't be surprised like either team wins this game, is the fact that the Rams and Sean McVay in week 18 could have got a better seed to avoid playing them and play the Commanders. And they said, nah, we're good. We're going to rest our guys. And we're just going to take the fact that we're going to play the Vikings, the 14-win wildcard team. That scares me. Because why is Sean McVay so comfortable just playing a 14-win wildcard team? Maybe it's because he already beat them earlier in the season. He knows what to do against Sam Darnold.
I think Sean McVay's an absolute psychopath. If you've seen him on the sidelines and just the faces he makes, he's never moving. He doesn't stop moving.
Unreal coach.
And he's pretty young. Unreal coach. Sarah, we got the Rams, we got the Vikings. Who are you taking in this one here?
I'm taking the Rams, and I'm also bringing more breaking news. Because of the horrible wildfires happening in California right now, this game, actually, the Vikings-Rams, is being moved to Arizona. So that game will be happening for neither of the teams at home.
Wow.
So
that's a bombshell. I think it's Vikings. I think it's got to be Vikings then.
No, it's got to be the Rams.
There's no home advantage, though. I mean, look, SoFi Stadium, it's not like there's a lot of Rams.
They're going to travel. Anyways. Like, you don't think they're going to transfer the tickets to Arizona and just say
they could
travel.
Go. I don't know. I think some people, and to be fair, a lot of the people in LA are in disarray at this point, and rightfully so. I think there's a lot going on. So I do wonder how that progresses into Arizona. So prayers for that in the first place. Yeah. That's crazy. Very good breaking news on that one, Sarah.
Yeah, that's timely. That was changer. Really good. That's a game changer. The line probably just changed right now. Just changed.
With that being said, we'll take a quick break and we'll jump into the AFC teams and wrap up with taking a second look and cheering for the Preds. Welcome back to the final portion, episode 4, Second Look Sports. We're in the midst of breaking down picks and previews for Super Wildcard Weekend. If you just missed it, we did the NFC. Exciting stuff. We just heard that the LA Rams and Minnesota Vikings game is moving from LA. Breaking news to Arizona due to the wildfires ongoing in LA. So prayers out to all of the folks, of course, in the Los Angeles and surrounding areas. In terms of a football perspective, that really changes the narrative for being moved to Arizona. We'll move on. We're sticking with the LA Chargers visiting the Houston Texans NRG Stadium Saturday at 4:30 p.m. As if anybody was surprised that the Houston Texans were playing the Saturday afternoon game for like the 5th year in a row in the playoffs for them. Chargers -3. I'm a Chargers fan, unbiasedly. I still think they're taking this win. They've had a great end of their season. They've played some weak teams. Jim Harbaugh will not be losing his first playoff game back in the NFL. I think all of his guys are ready to go. Now, Joshua Palmer is not playing in this game. Quentin Johnson is questionable. J.K. Dom is questionable. They did pick up Ezekiel Elliott like he's going to get a snap. I doubt it. I still think the Chargers have that momentum, and Houston they're sort of like faltering. So I do have the Chargers taking this one. Justin, thoughts on it?
You said the Chargers are -3, right?
They are -3 underdogs, or I guess Houston underdogs at home.
Yeah. They're gonna smash it, smash it. Like the Chargers are gonna run away with this game. Nothing that Houston has done this year on offense has really been that impressive, to be honest. For a team that we thought was going to have a great offense coming into the year, obviously they lost Stephon Diggs, they lost Tank Dell, but even when they had them, they didn't look like a complete offense. They looked clunky. They didn't look great. So I think the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh, they're going to run away with this game, and they're absolutely going to dominate them.
I like to hear that. Sarah, do you have the Chargers or do you have the Texans winning this game?
Yeah, I'm there with you guys. Chargers as well.
Nice. That's what I like to hear. Awesome. We have the Saturday night games taking in the AFC. Pittsburgh Steelers at Baltimore Ravens. Divisional matchup. Saturday, 8 p.m. Prime Video. Interesting. Ravens have the biggest spread of the weekend. -9.5 over the Steelers. I think for good reason. Now, Zay Flowers, we did find out today, is injured. I think he's out with a knee. So that changes the narrative. Right, but you still have Lamar Jackson with 915 rushing yards this year. You still have Derrick Henry with 1,900 plus this year. I still think they run all over the team, even with TJ Watt in the defense of Pittsburgh. I do think that they're just on a downswing, and this is a pretty typical Mike Tomlin end of the season. Great coach. Unfortunately, the past few years, the 10-7, 9-8 narrative and lose in the first round has not faltered, and I think it stays that way. I think Baltimore runs it down their throat. Justin, do you agree with me on that one?
I agree. I think
Yeah.
the one thing also they have is Mark Andrews, who they've kind of unlocked in the last like 10 weeks of the season, I feel like, or the second half of the season. I feel like he's really
Yeah.
improved his game. So I expect to see Mark Andrews involved as well, but I fully expect the Baltimore Ravens to blow out the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mr. Unlimited in Russell Wilson.
Damn, tough bounce. Sarah, Steelers or Ravens here?
Yeah, I'm there too. Ravens for sure.
Ravens for sure. Some of these games are just so obvious. I don't think there's going to be a ton of upsets. Now, final game is the Denver Broncos at the Buffalo Bills, Sunday, 1 p.m. on CBS. The Bills, the second highest spread in this one, in -8 for the Bills. I do think that this is going to be closer than we anticipate. I have a feeling for some reason that the Bills are going to win on like a late field goal. They will win. I don't see Denver winning the game, but I think they cover the spread. I just feel like 38-0, although it was basically like the farm team of the Kansas City Chiefs. I think it means a lot for Denver to make the playoffs for the first time in like 6 or 7 years, I think. And I think with Bo Nix, he's going to bring a lot of energy. Pat Surtain's going to probably win Defensive Player of the Year, or he's going to be at least top 3. I do think this team's going to make a push. And I know they're AFC West rivals with the Chargers, but man, I'll give them a lot of credit. I don't think they win, but I do think they make this game a lot more interesting than Vegas seems to think. So, Justin, do you think it'll be a blowout here?
I don't think so.
No?
I think the Bills are gonna blow it out. I think yeah, the Bills are just so powerful. Like, and I get what you're saying about the defense and how they might be sneaky. And I'm still thinking like it's Josh Allen. It's his MVP season, man. He's gonna dominate them just like he dominated every other team that he's played this year. And you mentioned with their weapons, but I really think they have a lot of weapons that you know might not be high names or might not be star names, but they're gonna get the job done.
Yeah, that's a fair point. James Cook, I think, deserves a lot more credit.
16 touchdowns this year. That's
pretty impressive.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Tie for the league lead.
Yeah, we'll give him his flowers. And so, Sarah, how does Haley Steinfeld's boyfriend Josh Allen perform?
No, fiance.
My
come
apologies. Disrespect. How does Josh Allen and the Bills, how do they fare against Denver? Do you think they win this one?
I mean, I wish I could say that I believe, as our friend Evan would put it. But unfortunately, no. Definitely the Bills. Definitely. Yeah, Josh Allen, I mean, he's just going to continue what we've seen a lot of all season. Yeah. And they're going to take this one for sure.
I can't argue there. I do think it'll be tighter. We'll have to give our predictions, so keep an eye out on our Instagram page moving forward. We're going to put out some picks for the entire SLS team, and so we'll see how we fare moving into the playoffs. But we'll finish off with 2 of our favorite segments. We'll start off here with the 3 of us coming up with our Taking a Second Look, where we take a look at something, whether it be a league, a player, or what have you, on in the past week or so, the things that we, or as an audience, you should be focusing on as the leagues move into the latter half, at least NBA, NFL, and NHL. So, Sarah, let's go to you first. Who is your Taking a Second Look this week?
So my Taking a Second Look has to do with actually the WNBA and the draft that'll be coming up this spring. And I think that we should be taking a second look at Paige Bueckers, and I don't know if she's going to declare for the draft. That's my maybe. Maybe it's controversial, but she does have 1 more year left if she wants to play college. I mean, she just got injured. I don't think that has anything to do with it, but kind of Caitlin Clark was talking about this in her interview with Time magazine when she was the athlete of the year. And she was talking about just the level of play difference between college and WNBA and just how both are fun, but it's obviously quite different. And I think that Paige probably already knows that, and she knows what's coming up. And maybe she wants to stay with UConn. Maybe if they don't win a championship this year, she's like, okay, let's run it back. She really, really wants one, I think. And so I'm not saying she's not gonna declare. I'm not quite too sure yet, but I think if you're the Dallas Wings, you can't be like, oh yeah, we got her on lock, because she might surprise everyone. So taking a second look at that point. And maybe looking at that in the next coming months and seeing, okay, which way does she seem to be leaning? So that's mine for this week.
That's fun. I think we talked about that a few weeks ago about like Paige Beckers and whether it's just because Dallas is up there on top of the charts, and that's why. Like if a different team were getting that first overall draft pick, that'd be interesting to see how it turns. But I'm gonna have to keep an eye on that. Justin, who do you have for you? Who are you taking a second look at? I should say.
I'm taking a second look at Bill Belichick. Bill.
Damn.
Like Bill Belichick. Are you kidding me? Like, don't even think about accepting Tom Brady's phone calls. Just don't even think about it. You just signed at UNC. Don't leave. Give it at least a season. Like, I know there's a buyout option in his contract if he wants to go back to the NFL. But listen, why commit to UNC if you were going to leave 3 weeks later? It doesn't make any sense to me if you are going to do this. Just don't pick up the phone from Tom Brady. Stay at UNC for at least a year. Let the Raiders figure out what they need to do and hire an actual coach and GM.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think he's going anywhere. I also don't like this whole Tom Brady sticking his nose in too much. Like, how can you be a part owner of the Raiders and also a broadcaster and also get votes for like MVP or league awards? Like, this is too much. Like, I hate this. I don't like it.
I understand.
That's all I gotta say. Collusion. Who I'm taking a second look at this week, sneaky good Vezina Trophy possible candidate in Mackenzie Blackwood. We talked about him moving over to the Colorado Avalanche a few weeks ago. Now here, we talked about him, but he's 7-1-1 since joining Colorado, 938 save percentage, 1.69 GAA. Since December 4th, he ranks third in goals save above expected and save percentage as well as wins. So the Avs are right now first wild card, and I think it's just because of their rocky start and the fact that they obviously had some goaltending issues to start the year. He's played unbelievable, and I think he's going to make Canada upset that they did not select him for the Four Nations tournament. I think he's going to push Colorado into one of the top three in the Central Division. So that's what I got for you.
Did Connor Hellebuyck just like go into the hospital or something?
He will win. Connor Hellebuyck will win the Vezina, but Mackenzie Blackwood will push his name into the top three.
Okay.
Obviously, that's crazy. That would be nuts. Now, unless Connor Hellebuyck, like I have a wood table, unless he is injured, and I'm hoping he's not because you never wish injury. Well, maybe he has a minor injury, so he can't play the Four Nations, and then he's completely fine for Winnipeg. See, I don't know. We're getting too into the weeds here. Great stuff. Let's finish things off with our cheering from the press box segment, where we cheer for a team or specific person. Just excitement moving forward. Justin, let's start with you. Who are you cheering from the press box for moving forward into the weekend and next week?
Yeah, I just wanted to keep this for this because I wanted to say I'm cheering for Ken Hughes. Ken Hughes came out with his media availability yesterday, and he said he's not going to overreact to the recent hot streak. And I think that's a smart decision for this upcoming trade deadline. I don't think you want to like sell the farm. Maybe you go out and get a depth player to like reward the guys, or you extend Jake Evans to say, hey, Jake Evans is not going to leave here. We're not just going to let him go. But I don't think you just sell the plan and say, hey, let's start giving away assets and let's start giving away prospects just because we went on this hot streak. I think you have to stay the course with what you're trying to develop. And I'm cheering for Ken Hughes because he actually realized that and came out and said that in his mid-season presser yesterday.
Okay. Cheering for a GM. What are you, like a businessman now?
I'm cheering for the GM. I'm cheering for smart decisions. Decisions.
Okay, that's fair. Cheering for smart decisions, I can get on board with. Sarah, who are you cheering from the press box for this week?
I mean, we already talked a lot about the PWHL, but I have to cheer for Claire Thompson, one of the top players in the PWHL this season. She's tied for league leading points with 10, and she has 9 assists leading in that category. And this is her first season in the league. She's with the Minnesota Frost. And something that's so cool about her, like, she's obviously dominating in women's hockey right now. Insane. She's also in medical school. Like, she's going to be a doctor. That's why she didn't play last year, because she was trying to find a way to make it work with practicing with the team and also doing med school. And she just couldn't figure it out with visas and school and et cetera, to be able to travel and whatever. So she decided to take a year off from doing her med school and play, and thank goodness, because she's been tearing it up in the PWHL. But one cool fact about her, and this is like why I'm cheering for her, I love those kind of little nerdy things, is her teammates call her the human chat GPT. So I think it's pretty incredible that she can be such an insane example on the ice and leading in that way, and then also leading in the dressing room, knowing everything. Like, we gotta cheer for her. So
they call her that because like she's smart, like she knows
everything.
Okay.
Like they don't need to ask AI. She's got it. She is it.
Got it.
So Alex just confirmed he's not our chat GTP or chat.
I'm
not either. I'm not either. But you know what? Alex proved that he's not either. So that's all that matters.
I mean, look, that's a great story. And it reminds me of like Haley Wickenheiser. She went to med school, I think. And then she works now with the Leafs on their, I don't know if she's on the scouting department or if she's more on like the hockey operations team.
I think she's more on the hockey
like
ops.
The training. Yeah. I'm pretty confident in that too. So very exciting there. But the human ChatGPT, isn't that just like any human? Because ChatGPT is an AI?
Well, it's like, the point of ChatGPT is something you can ask anything to and it tells you the answer.
Exactly.
So you can just ask her anything and she'll spit out the answer.
Essentially.
Or you can ask her for a pass and she'll give you a perfect assist and
I like that.
score.
You know,
I
She's
like
got
that.
both ends.
I like that explanation.
You know who she could like, be represent or be the similar to or equivalent
to?
Yeah, I'm struggling with my words here. Brandon is definitely our chat GTP.
Chat GPT.
Chat GTP.
Yeah. Oh no.
Wait, what?
You're cut off. You said it wrong.
GPT.
Oh, GPT.
There it is.
Okay.
That's true. He really
that
is.
Is true.
That
is true. So anything we got wrong this episode is just because Brandon's not here to fact check.
Yeah, honestly, we'll give him way more flowers than we have at all. Real quick,
throw me in grade 1. I can. Yeah.
Listen, we know sports. Some of us, Sarah, you probably know more. We know one thing, and that's why we're doing this podcast. Just real quick for me, cheering. We already talked about them. LA Chargers. They're my team. They're in the playoffs, obviously playing the Houston Texans. Very excited to see what they have in store. Jim Harbaugh gives me so much life when I watch these games. They have Ezekiel Elliott, whether he plays or whether he does not. It's not like it's an exciting ad, but it's a good depth play, especially if J.K. Dobbins doesn't end up playing. I'm pumped to see what they do. I still think it was a successful season, but I still think they can beat Texans. And if any team I think is going to even put up a fight against the Chiefs, I think it might be the Chargers. I don't know if they'll win, but it's hard to beat a team in the NFL 3 times. Kansas City's already beaten the Chargers multiple times. So we'll see if the miracle run is in store.
All I'm going to say is I'm on your side until you say, I'm cheering for Ezekiel Elliott. What is that?
Any bump for your team is I don't know. I think he's just probably going to be one of those guys where Jim Harbaugh's going to get him on the side.
Practice roster.
He'll play.
What do you mean?
He won't
play. You think he's dressing?
He won't dress, I think, for this game. But if they beat the Texans, I can see him making a run. Jim Harbaugh said it himself. He said that I don't have like an exact quote, but he was saying if they make a deep playoff run, he'll probably be a part of it. So
okay.
What that happens. My coach. Sure. It's my coach. Exciting stuff all around, team. I know we got a little ahead ourselves, a little bit of a longer one, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Entertaining conversation. Debut for our producer, Sarah Maat here. And then Justin Arenburg, as per usual, bringing his takes, bringing his thoughts. We had a lot of flowers for you this week, too, because it was a big week for your teams. I'm Alex Mandarino. Thank you for listening. Check out this show. Check us out for our socials. Follow, subscribe. Check out Second Look Hockey. And we'll see you next Friday.
Yeah.